Shedeur and Deion caught Browns media in a huge lie, because the story everyone repeated suddenly started falling apart. For months, people kept saying the Browns were walking into chaos. They said Deion Sanders would become a distraction. They said Shedeur Sanders came with too much attention, too much pressure, too much noise. But then the people inside the building started saying something completely different, and suddenly the narrative didn't sound so certain anymore.
This is the part I think people are missing. It's a two-way conversation. So if Todd is as blunt as direct as everyone says he is, Todd can tell Deion, hey, listen, this is where he's short. This is where he's missing, because they've spent quite a bit of time together now. They don't have a game together in the field. They've been together in that building for quite a while now. So Todd can tell Deion, this is what you're missing. This is what he's not doing. This is where he needs to catch up.
I know, but that is a conduit in most player-coach relationships that doesn't need to exist. Normally, the coach goes to the play. I know it's not normal, and that's part of my point. Part of my point is, for the Browns organization to welcome this on, they're not the best organization suited to deal with this.
I've said that from the beginning.
And that was my biggest problem with it. There were so many other organizations that could have dealt with this so much better.
And one of them tried to take them, and the family told them no.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And that might have been a better situation for him. But obviously, he's indebted to the Browns because they were the ones that ultimately pulled his card and called his name. But the Browns and their infrastructure and their lack of being able to deal with these kind of things successfully, I thought handicapped the whole thing from jump. Now we're going to throw another wild drama bomb into the mix, and let's see how this works out.
Deion Sanders wasn't even on the roster, and somehow he became one of the biggest talking points. That's the power of Prime. One comment, one interview, one mention, and suddenly the football world stops. Because Deion doesn't enter rooms quietly. He never has. And honestly, he was never built to. People heard discussions about Deion wanting conversations involving his son, and immediately some reactions started sounding like alarms going off. Suddenly people started acting like Coach Prime was preparing some takeover. Like he was about to walk into Cleveland and start controlling the franchise. But then you stop and ask yourself something. Wait a minute. Deion Sanders isn't just a father. He's a Hall of Famer. He's coached Shedeur for years. He spent years studying his strengths and weaknesses. Who would know him better? Seriously. If you're Todd Monken and you're trying to understand a quarterback you've inherited, why wouldn't you talk to someone who's coached him almost his entire football life? Is Deion interfering? Will this become a distraction? Can Cleveland handle this? Suddenly people weren't discussing routes, or reads, or footwork. They were discussing family dynamics. Meanwhile, recent comments started pointing somewhere completely different. Shedeur publicly described Todd Monken and the staff as bringing a new vibe and new energy. He praised how coaches embraced players personally while still pushing them every day. Wait, hold on, that's not conflict. That's not tension. That's not dysfunction. That's praise. So now questions started changing. If Shedeur is publicly supporting Monken, and Monken is giving him opportunities, then where exactly was the disaster everyone promised? And what happened next made the conversation even louder.
I actually think if you look at it, maybe they weren't equipped. Communication styles work differently. I think that Todd Monken's communication style, from everything that I've seen on interviews, when they asked him, when Anthony Lima and King Carmen asked him and said, hey, what do you think about the whole comments and everything, and do you have to kind of calm some of that down? He said, man, listen, man, it's about winning. Like, if you want people to have outside noise and get it stopped, win.
That's it.
To be honest with you, the reason why we get paid so much is because you guys do cover every single little small story. I think Todd Monken, the way he's built like an alpha male, and he's built like a person that's he's confident in who he is as a coach. So for him, it's nothing to have a conversation with another great player.
The internet doesn't wait. It chooses sides immediately. Within hours, people split into camps. One side said, "See, told you. Prime is too involved." Another side fired back, "No, people just hate the Sanders family." And then chaos began. Podcasts, reaction channels, clips, tweets, arguments. Everybody suddenly had answers. Everybody suddenly knew exactly what was happening behind closed doors. Funny thing is, most people weren't even inside the building. People love certainty. even when certainty doesn't exist. That's why narratives spread fast. Because uncertainty makes people uncomfortable. So fans started creating theories. Every practice rep meant something. Every facial expression meant something. Every interview sentence meant something. And then another detail started changing the conversation. Reports from Brown's minicamp showed Shedeur receiving opportunities and operating within Todd Monken's quarterback competition structure. Not favoritism, not drama. Competition. Actual football competition. Funny how boring reality sometimes sounds compared to internet drama. Because competition doesn't create giant headlines. Chaos does. Conflict does. People wanted fireworks. But football people kept discussing development. And suddenly the people screaming the loudest started sounding less certain. Because there was one massive problem. Reality wasn't cooperating. Then came the twist. And this is where things started getting uncomfortable for everybody who already decided they knew the ending. April 2026. Shedeur spoke openly about Todd Monken. And what he said wasn't subtle. He talked about a new vibe, a new energy. He said coaches were embracing players personally while pushing them every day. That's huge. Because words matter, especially quarterback words. Quarterbacks protect answers. They give generic statements. We're taking it one day at a time. We're getting better. We're focused. Instead, Shedeur sounded energized. Like someone feeling opportunity. Like someone feeling belief. And suddenly people started realizing something. Maybe everyone spent so much time expecting problems that they forgot to look for progress. Maybe this wasn't becoming chaos. Maybe this was becoming growth. Todd Monken himself talked positively about Shedeur's playmaking ability, while also acknowledging development still needed to happen. That's coaching. Not attacking. Not criticizing. Coaching. The exact thing people claimed couldn't happen. But if reality kept saying one thing, why did the old narrative refuse to disappear? This isn't about saying media is evil. This isn't about saying everybody lied. It's bigger than that. Sometimes stories become stronger than facts. People hear something enough times, and suddenly it becomes reality in their minds. Too much attention, too much drama, too much prime. Those phrases started living on their own. But here's the problem. Football eventually exposes everything. Because football doesn't care about narratives. Film doesn't care, practice doesn't care, results don't care, and that's where things become interesting. Deion recently said his son went through hell during parts of the draft process and criticism surrounding his NFL journey. Think about that word, hell. That's not talking about pressure. That's talking about perception, about noise, about stories, about what people think they know. Maybe that's the hidden part of all this. Because football criticism is normal. Quarterbacks get criticized every day. But once family names, personalities, and expectations enter the room, sometimes football stops being football and becomes something else entirely. At some point, every athlete faces the same challenge. Not proving they can play, proving they can become themselves. Because Shedeur Sanders has spent years being introduced as Deion's son. That's pressure. Imagine carrying one of football's most famous names every single day. Imagine people deciding who you are before you even speak. Imagine hearing your story written before you've lived it. That's heavy. But maybe that's why this moment matters. Because maybe this isn't really about Brown's media. Maybe it isn't even about Deion. Maybe it's about identity. Maybe it's about a young quarterback trying to create space for his own story. Not Prime's story. His story. And if Todd Monken truly creates the environment Shedeur described, then maybe this becomes bigger than controversy. Maybe it becomes opportunity. The biggest surprise wasn't that people argued. Sports always create arguments. The surprise was watching reality slowly push back against assumptions. Because the disaster everyone predicted? The conflict everyone expected? So far, football itself seems to be telling a different story. Now the question becomes, was this really a lie that got exposed, or was it simply a reminder that sometimes the loudest story isn't always the true one? If you enjoyed this video and love football drama, rivalries, and NFL stories that go deeper than headlines, subscribe and turn on notifications because the next story might already be unfolding.